I think I have a new roommate. I live in the house, he lives in the walls. It's here. I don't know where, I don't know how, but it's here. It's inside the house. I've done everything. I've called Todd. I've called Alexi. I even called a goddamn exorcist. None of them believed me. None of them so much as offered to help. Now it's Halloween, and it's stronger than ever. I can feel it, moving through the house like a great darkness suffocating the light from everything. It's already taken by my business partners, John and Erica. It's already taken so many others. I'm upstairs in my bedroom closet. I've been here for 3 hours now, and I'll be here for 3 more if that's what it takes. I don't know if the thing hates the sun, but it never bothered me during the day, only at night. Always at night. There's a creak and a groan outside, on the steps, and I feel the house tremble as something monstrous moves through it. My breath hitches in my chest and I remind myself to be still, to be quiet. I just need to make it until sunrise. Just a little longer. Then the voice follows, low, raspy, and inhuman. So many lies, so many lives, and so little time. It's singing a song, but the tune is broken. Each word scrapes along my ears like a razor blade, cutting deep into my mind and pulling back memories. It sang before it took John. It was only a single word then. Coming, it had hummed, and we had all just thought we were hearing things. Now John's everywhere. There are pieces of him littered throughout the house, fingers and toes and intestines and eyes. I weep silently into my hands, and I can smell John's blood on them. I can hear his screams. I can taste my cowardice for not doing more to help him, for not even trying. Oh, how good it'll feel to finally go, the thing sings, and I wince in pain at every word. God damn, it hurts to listen to. Warmth flows from my ears, and I realize they're bleeding. Just one more and then the song ends. I gasp in agony as more memories tear themselves from my mind. Erica, her and I had separated in the panic of John's death. I had run up here trying to call the police, but my phone was haywire. That's when I heard it come for her in the basement. The house creaked and groaned with the creature's every step. One more will do, it had sung, descending the basement stairs. One more makes 2. I only heard her scream for a moment, and then it faded to silence, until the thing laughed, guttural and monstrous. It echoed throughout the house, shaking the foundations and rattling the old wooden frame. It laughed and it laughed. All that we need, all that we eat, all hail the coming of All Hallows Eve. Now it's moving toward me. It's getting closer. I can feel its every step, its every movement. It passes through the house with tremors of violence. Just one more, it sings again, and then the song ends. It's outside the bedroom now and my ears are bleeding badly. I can't take it anymore. I can't take the sound. I clamp my eyes shut, trying to ignore the agony of its voice, trying to ignore the panic riding in my body. The floorboards creak outside the closet and I smell something rotten, vile and grotesque. Something dead. There's a low groan as the closet door slides open. Looky, looky, it sings, discordant and tuneless. Wouldn't you like to see something spooky? I don't look. Agony tears through my ears. They're being split open from the inside out, and blood is pouring from my head in a river down my jaw. I whimper, and something leans close to me. The smell of rot is nearly unbearable now, and I gag and retch, but I refuse to open my eyes. I can't. If I see it, then it's real. If I see it, then I die. Something grips my wrist, something cold and damp and loose with flesh. It pulls me from the closet and I howl in terror and fear. It's taking me somewhere. Please, I sputter, please don't. My leg cracks as it drags me down the steps and I scream. My eyes are clamped shut, but I feel myself moving through pieces of John as the creature pulls me through the house. Finally, it stops. I'm hyperventilating now, my chest rising and falling in rapid succession. No, 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 I mutter, again and again. Yes, it says, and this time it isn't singing. It tosses me by my arm, and I feel my shoulder snap backwards out of its socket. I tumble down the old wooden stairs, my head smashing against the steps, my wrist snapping in half as I finally collide against the landing. I groan, tears and blood streaming down my face. Looky, looky, it sings, though its voice is now guttural and horrible. It grabs me by the back of my hair, pulls my head up and reaches its fingers down to my eyelids. Wouldn't you like to see something spooky? It pulls them open, and I see our studio. Our cameras pointing toward the cages. 10 of them, each filled with pieces of the children, each a tapestry. The light in the basement is dim, but I can see Sally's witch hat, still tied to her head. I can see Michael's werewolf paw, still on his dismembered hand. I lick my lips. There in the back is Yonda's Cinderella costume, the glass slippers still upon one of her feet. The thing throws me forward, and I crash against the steel bars of the cage. When I look up in a daze, I see Erica's corpse, my dear filmmaker, mutilated and cut into pieces. Her eyes are missing and her hand is stuffed halfway down her throat. I lean forward and vomit, only then realizing that I'm lying in a pool of her blood. So many lies, so many lives, and so little time, the creature sings. I hear the click of a button being pressed, and see a red light hovering in the darkness. The camera is recording. Looky, looky. Please, I rasp. The house creaks and groans as it steps forward, and my body scrambles backward on its own accord. Please! Wouldn't you like to see something spooky? I'm a dark web hitman, and I was hired to murder myself. I've always enjoyed hunting, and I blame it on my farm childhood. I first hunted a deer when I was 10. I was limber and had developed a strong body. Dana was never a huntress, but she was great at hiding. So she hid. At first Dad was angry, but I hunted so well that I did more than enough for both of us. Dad died when I was 13. He was caught by a bear and kept screaming, "Shoot it, shoot it!" I only had 2 bullets left, and I was too worried, so the first missed and the second wasn't enough to take down the bear. Dana grabbed my hand and we ran like the wind. I'm honestly not sad about my father's last words to me. He was desperate and being eaten alive after all. I forgave him in a heartbeat. Who I never was able to forgive was myself for failing Dad. By the time I was 18, I married the sweetest man. It was crazy how we balanced each other's personality, him being always so calm and gleeful. Tom was 15 years older than me and a merchant, helping me sell parts of my hunting, the meat, the fur, the heads as prizes. We were happy. We lived 5 great years until he was shot in a robbery. From that moment on, a burning rage lived inside of me. The eagerness to hunt took over. I didn't know how to manage a shop, so I asked my husband's brother Stu to take his place in management, but Stu was a drunk and a buffoon, and soon the shop bankrupted. I was left with nothing. When I learned about the shady parts of the internet, I finally realized I could sell my services and satiate my ever-growing bloodlust. I'm famous now. I mean, my work name is. Nobody knows my face, nobody knows I'm even a woman. My body is small and strong, perfect for sneaking in. I look trustworthy enough for my prey to take me to dinner. Sometimes it's too easy. I have built a name between politicians, and rich, cheated wives love me. Of course, my clients are not always from the highest social standings, and they try to bargain a lot. It's not unusual that some broken guy asks me to murder his rich father and get paid after I do the job when he gets his inheritance. I just laugh at their faces and tell them to stop asking me before I murder them instead. Until the day my instincts told me to keep talking to the guy after he told me his conditions of payment. "I will inherit some money," he wrote. "But the thing is, I used to have a brother. He's dead now, no kids. But I talked to my attorney and he told me his widow will get half of my money, so I want to eliminate her." "Sure, just send me her info," I replied for the first time. Because I knew this story. I didn't want to be paranoid and think it was me. I just felt sorry for the poor woman. But when I saw the details, my heart dropped. It was me. My brother-in-law, who was constantly helped by me and my husband after losing everything in gambling over and over, who ruined our store and I never said a thing, wanted to murder me. No, worse than that, he wanted to hire someone else to murder me, because his coward self couldn't even do it. I took the job. The next day I went to see my sister Dana and asked her something no twin sister should ask the other. "Can you die in my place? When I take a job, I will finish it no matter what it takes." So I sent my client a picture of my dead victim, my sister. I was famous for this modus operandi. As I said, Dana ain't a huntress, she's a great hider. So, after I forged her death and gave Stu a false sense of safety, he found my sister, characterized as me, at his dirty apartment. Dora, what are you doing here?" He was stuttering and sweating. "Just came by to talk a little about the inheritance we're about to get," my sister calmly said, perfectly mimicking my voice and intonation. Stu never knew I had a sister because she lived far away during her graduation. Both me and my husband always kept to ourselves and never had a wedding party, so our families didn't know each other very well. "Inheritance? I don't know what you're talking about." He made a poor attempt at lying. "Why don't you ask the hitman you hired, Stu?" she asked as I came from behind him, wearing the exact same clothes as her. I gotta admit it was so much fun to stage this. When he turned to look at me, Stu was pale, and I'm pretty sure he peed himself. "What is going on? What kind of joke is this?" That's all he could say before I gagged him. "It's your fault that my husband was shot, isn't it?" I stabbed him once. I knew very well how to lethally stab someone only once, making a cleaner death, but it wouldn't happen this time. He shook his head desperately, trying to deny it, but his eyes told the truth. I never fully realized it until that instant. It was a moment of clarity and I hated his guts even more. Both me and my sister did what we were best at. She hid, not wanting to see the bloodbath I was about to cause, and I stabbed and stabbed and stabbed. When the body was found, the police immediately arrested Stu's loan shark. They were investigating him for a long time and just needed one more move to make theirs. They confirmed my suspicions about the loan shark murdering my husband. I noticed that with the closure, my bloodlust diminished. I still go hunting most weekends, but I'm done with being a hit woman. Nothing can bring Tom back, but I can move forward, learn new things, work with something else. I still have a lot to live for. So let me give you some advice. If you're thinking about hiring a hitman, don't. The best one went out of business. I was the head of NASA Alien Relations for 30 years. Extraterrestrial life is not what you think. I'm telling you this because I threw away my life the second I signed those papers in order to take this job. It was the most eye-opening, miserable, and tortuous years of my life. I don't care if I die or disappear by tomorrow. People need to know about this. The best thing I concluded from my job is this. Life is funny. It's here until it isn't. Sometimes it wastes away over the course of years. Other times it's instantaneous. It's a spark or an ember, igniting in one moment and then dying in the next. It happens so fast that you wonder if it was ever there at all. I think that's what you can expect your life to be. A quick thing, here today, gone tomorrow. Up in flames, dead in a flash. It's a bold claim and I'm not calling myself a fortune teller, but I am saying I'm privy to some details that aren't terribly fortunate. For you or me. Politics. It always comes down to politics, doesn't it? Strings. They pull them, we jerk and dance, praying that somebody somewhere has our best interests at heart. Once upon a time, I was that somebody. Honest, I was. I began working in government 3 decades ago. Back then, I was still a wide-eyed and ambitious intern with big ideas about improving the human experience. I wanted to help. Deep down, I think that maybe I still do, but I can't. Nobody can. Here's the thing, the big secret that they don't want you to know. This is a game. All of it. But I've read the rules, and I've seen the state of the board, and for you and I, for the world at large, the match is rigged. We're playing at a disadvantage. Soon we won't be playing at all. The strange thing, or maybe the depressing thing, is that it isn't even about us. Not really. It's not about them either. The shadow brokers at the top, making deals with the devil and trying to leverage our fate. It's about something greater. It's about the pretext to human existence and the destiny we've been afforded. The truth is, we're not alone in this universe. Never have been. There are things out there vaster than stars and more violent than war. Things that have been biding their time. We've been fed a steady diet of chaos and fury, of love and pleasure, all in an attempt to fill our insatiable hunger to feel. All in an attempt to ripen us, for them. Once some force that has long since vanished, dealt with them. The ancient terrors beyond the veil. It subdued them, defeated them. In order to do so, it harnessed the power of creation itself, the Big Bang. We've determined the origin of our universe was not a product of chance, but rather an attack of desperation. It was a gamble to overcome titans too horrible to comprehend. And it worked. For a while. Now those beings are awakening again. Slowly, one by one, they're lurching up from their slumbers and turning their eyes to the rarest, most empowering energy in the universe. Human emotion. Intangible and infinite, forged in the kiln of our souls. We cannot stop them. We cannot contain them. Some of us are even working to help them, bombarding the masses with multimedia, grooming our thoughts and poisoning our minds. Anything for a reaction. If that sounds hopeless, then just know that it is. You and I are fuel for abominations, calories for the cosmos. Our harvest is coming, and when it arrives there will be no resistance and there will be no songs of our passing. Our spirits will be cremated in the stomachs of ancient things. The fabric of our beings will be scattered far and wide, lost and mutilated, less than a memory. But there's another way. See, the people at the top have a plan, and it's a plan we've been inching closer toward year by year. Soon you'll see it spring into action. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. It begins with a panic and the long drone of sirens in the street. The world stops. Nobody knows what to do, but that's okay because this part doesn't last long. Soon after, there's a crack of thunder and screaming. So much screaming. It's terrible and awful, but it's quickly drowned by the low bass of infinity and the rush of a hurricane. Windows shatter, bones tremble and skin sears. The horizon erupts into smoke and flame. 1,000 mushroom clouds ascend into heaven carrying 1 billion cauterized souls. Of course, there will be survivors. The unlucky few, fret not. In the hours following, the sky will split and bleed black, irradiating their flesh and exorcising them of their destiny. We will be free. All of us. It's frightening, I know. Ultimately, though, what choice do we have? Some people won't want me telling you this. They'll be afraid of the shockwaves and what it could do to upset society. But as human beings, I think we're owed an explanation. So make your peace. Say your goodbyes. I don't know exactly when the end will come. I just know that when it does, I recommend a front row seat. Don't wait for the rain. I trapped my homophobic brother in my basement. If I release him, he'll murder me. James was my parents' pride and joy and a very good kid. I was overjoyed to see that as he grew up, he started to look up to me. As my little brother grew up, however, our life started to improve, and I dare to say he had a happy childhood. Our father got a huge promotion, which meant that Mom could work only part-time. We moved to a nicer house with a pool and started making yearly trips to Disney World. What else could a little boy wish for? Clearly more than that. Since I was 12, I started exercising and strengthening my body to fight my bullies. That became a hobby and a way to blow some steam, so I pursued getting physically stronger. By the time I was 16, I was more muscular than anyone I knew, and no one messed up with me. In fact, I became quite popular against my will. Despite my popularity, the only friendship I had was with a girl named Maya. She had been nice to me before I was considered handsome. Girls were chasing me, but they began to learn that I was more interested in guys. Maya lived near my house and also had a way younger sister, Amy. We were so close that even our parents and our younger siblings became friends among themselves. That was probably when this black cloud started to form. As James and Amy grew up together, it became clear that she'd be a beautiful young lady while he was hit by puberty worse than most. My cute and great little brother grew up into one of the ugliest teenage boys I had ever seen. His skin was oily and full of acne, his facial hair was a mess, his taste in clothes was awful, and he became annoying and easily irritated. There was no amount of help I could give him. Even worse, people started comparing him to me and asking why he wasn't like me. It was easy to see that he started to despise me for that, and we grew apart. Only our parents still saw him as their perfect little boy. While all that happened to him, I finished school and decided not to go to college. Since I don't consider myself smart, but I'm great with physical labor, I ended up landing a simple but well-paying job that consisted of carrying stuff. I was still living at home, but in a matter of 3 years I was promoted to supervisor and started buying my own house. For that reason, I ended up moving away and not seeing James as much. He was cold and distant towards me and towards my parents, but we all thought it was just his rebellious phase. As far as I'm concerned, there were no red flags, at least for the time being. What I heard from Maya was the same. James was a recluse, and Amy wasn't that close to him anymore because he started acting unpleasantly, but that's relatively normal behavior too. Maybe this sort of behavior was a red flag when I look back, but none of those things could predict what he was about to do. It was a Tuesday night, and I went to my parents' house to have dinner with them and introduce them to my new boyfriend. They were relatively comfortable with it. I think I was always so adamant about not hiding who I was that they just accepted my sexuality without any dramas. James, however, refused to join us. My father tried to brush it off as, it's a lot for him to understand. No, he's just ashamed of me, I replied dryly. My relationship with the two of them was good, but not the best, mostly because I would always stand up for myself. I think it's not about you being gay. It's about people telling him he should look and act like you, my mother replied, trying to dispel the mist of uneasiness that was forming around us. It's not like it's my fault. I'm not apologizing for being me just because it bothers him, I told her, and got up. I'm not entirely sure what I was going to do. Confront my brother? Drag his ass to the dining room? I went upstairs and walked quietly towards James's bedroom. He was on a Skype call with someone. Yeah, my brother is here again. I wish he would just die, he chuckled. His words hurt me more than I'd like to admit, and I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. I'll wait until everyone is distracted to leave. I can't believe it's finally happening. It's been years since I first wanted to kidnap her. To say I was disgusted would be the understatement of the year. I literally had to go to the lavatory and vomit all over it before my mind and body could do anything else. After I was able to physically recover from learning the monster my brother was, I decided to storm into his room, get evidence, and call the police. However, when I did it, it was already too late and he had left the house. I quickly took a look around his computer, but the only things I could find without guessing his passwords were his browser, open in a low-key but notoriously incel forum, and a folder with pictures of Amy. They had been taken from afar, including some with Amy inside her house. He was clearly stalking his former friend. In tears, I made up some poor excuse for my parents and boyfriend and left the house to try and stop James. I found him hiding in her neighbor's lawn, lurking and waiting for the moment she'd either enter or leave the house to attack her. He had a knife and the most mischievous smile I ever saw in my life. My whole body trembled in pain and I wasn't sure how my knees didn't crumble to dust under my weight. I am not a smart man. All my strength is physical. But I do know that what I saw was not evidence enough. My brother was underage, he was friends with his victim, and he could just dismiss everything I said. He could erase things from his computer before someone could check it out. So I did the only thing I could think of. I placed one of my hands over his mouth while disarming him with the other, knocked him unconscious, and made my way to my car. James has been chained and gagged in my basement since then. My house is on a quiet street, and I don't get a lot of visitors anyway. Just the next day I started soundproofing the basement too. This was last December. He was reported missing, and the police are searching his computer for clues. So luckily they'll find something that will make everyone realize that he is better off gone. But of course my parents are miserable. Dad talks about James like he's still there. Mom is on suicide watch after trying to take her life 3 times. My actions destroyed my family to avoid a far greater evil. James is still my little brother, so I feed him properly, and I even put a TV with cartoons for him to watch the whole day. I don't even know if I plan on releasing him one day. I'm just so lost and so scared of what he will do to Amy and to other people. He hates my guts and constantly spits food on my face, but I'd rather bear it all on my own than risk other people's safety. Maybe it's my fault that I wasn't the big brother figure he needed. Maybe I could have avoided it by being there for him, by being different, so I'll at least shoulder it alone. Today, Maya and Amy requested to meet me to talk. Maya and I are still close, but not as close as we were before I moved away. I invited them to my house. Amy was crying the whole time. I did something awful, she sobbed. Maya patted her sister's shoulder. It seemed to encourage the younger girl to talk. Right before James went missing, he tried to assault me, so I murdered him. I froze. You killed him? Yes. Are you sure? Yes, I had Maya help me burn his body and all. I looked at Maya for confirmation. She nodded and Maya explained. Amy was alone at home. He had a knife. Your brother was fierce but scrawny. They fought and in her desperation she grabbed the knife. His guts were all over me. Amy whimpered. You murdered him? I asked once again in pure shock. I was obviously giving them the wrong idea. Maya was clearly disappointed that I seemed to be taking his side. Look, we know he's your little brother and we're sorry too. But it was her right to defend herself, so... No, it's not like that, I replied vaguely. My mind was racing. If they murdered and burned him, what is this thing that I've been keeping in my basement? I inherited my grandmother's old cabin after her death. I've decided to sell it after what I saw in there. My grandmother passed away last month, but nobody found her corpse until a week ago. Hazards of living out in the mountains, I suppose. My uncle couldn't believe it. He'd been driving her groceries and supplies once a month, and according to the coroner's report, She died a day after he'd left. What are the chances? Pretty high after what I discovered. To hear him tell it, she was just fine when he'd driven away too. Spry as she'd ever been. She was even getting her own water from the river and doing a bit of fishing on the side. And then poof, deceased. Griff, her golden retriever, was gone now too. My uncle thought he probably took off after realizing Grandma wasn't waking up. Maybe got hungry and went off chasing squirrels in the woods or something. My uncle strolled about and called Griff's name for hours after he'd found Grandma, looking in all his usual hiding spots but had no luck. My opinion? Griff probably got as far away as he could. After the funeral, my brother and I offered to come up and help our uncle clean up her things. Or at least my brother did, and I got guilt-tripped along for the ride. Apparently, she left the cabin to the two of us in her will. Split custody, not that either of us wanted it. We'd more than had our fill of memories out there. That said, it was a nice day to tidy up a dead woman's things. The summer sun shone bright, and there wasn't so much as a cloud in the sky. Overhead, sparrows darted between the towering pine trees, flitting around the cabin's small clearing while they sang their birdsong. "I'm gonna bring this stuff down the mountain and head in for the night," Uncle Jake said, gesturing to his pickup truck full of Grandma's furniture. "You two gonna take off soon, or spend the night?" He looked like the spitting image of a mountain man, standing there with his tree trunk arms and red flannel shirt. The beard was the cherry on top. "We'll be heading out soon," I said. "Don't worry about us. The car got us up here just fine. It'll get us back down." Uncle Jake was suspicious of any vehicle that didn't have a cargo bed. "Sure thing, boys. Take it easy now." He hopped into the cab of the pickup and slammed the door with a metal clang. A moment later, the engine turned over and the mountain air was replaced with the thick smell of diesel and rust. With a rumble, the truck rolled out of the cabin's dirt driveway, bobbed down the makeshift road, and disappeared to the faint riffs of AC/DC's Thunderstruck. "Stay the night," my brother Eric said, snickering, as if we'd spend a night in this hellhole. Eric was tall and lanky, poor of eyesight and blindingly pale. He pulled his thick glasses from his face and wiped the lenses clean on his Marvel t-shirt. "I say we finish these last couple boxes and follow him down." He peered up through the pine trees overhead, where the sun was beginning its slow descent into the evening. "We're a few hours from dark yet, but I want to be far from these woods when the lights go out." He shot me a knowing wink. I walked up the creaking wooden porch and pulled the thick door open. "Then stop looking at your phone every 5 minutes and help me get this done." I stepped inside, leaving the door to swing in the breeze. "I'm just trying to get in touch with Dad. He still hasn't answered my texts." Eric paused. "Do you ever think about what happened?" Eric asked, coming up from behind me and gently placing his books in the box. He frowned at my disorganized mess and began restacking them neatly. "No. I think about it almost every day. It was horrible." I didn't say anything. Instead, I walked back to the bookshelf and grabbed another armful of books, then stomped back to the box and dumped them in. I shrugged him off, but his expression was pleading. He wanted to talk about it. "You won't talk to me about it," he stammered. "I have no f***ing clue if what I remember even happened." With a sigh, I thunked down in my grandmother's rocking chair. It sat in front of her red brick fireplace, now filled with only the ghosts of old charred logs. I idly thought to myself that it'd probably never be used again, because I planned on tearing this cabin down and leaving it for the insects. It would be better that way. I only wished I could tear down the memories with it. A week at this cabin had gifted me a decade of alcoholism, chronic depression, and a side of insomnia. It took a cocktail of prescription meds just to get me to sleep these days, and when I did, it was a coin toss whether or not I'd experience sleep paralysis. And now Eric wanted to dig those memories up. I flexed my right hand, staring at the thick scars that wound their way across it. Even now, all these years later, I could still see the blood, smell it, taste it. My heart started racing just thinking about it, and I forced myself to look away. I focused on the hearth before me, and something caught my eye. "What the hell?" I muttered, leaning forward. It wasn't a log. It was something much smoother. The shape was all wrong, though. I left the chair and knelt down, sifting through the ashes and burnt timber, uncovering the curious object with mounting horror. I pulled it free, brushing away flakes of ash with my fingertips. My arm quivered. "Eric," I said, pushing the word from my mouth. "Is this Griff?" Footsteps sounded from the other room and he came bounding in, face brimming with excitement. "You found Griff?" I didn't say anything. I stared at the skull in my hand, doing my best to hold back the floodgates of memories. My eyes found Eric's, and I held the skull aloft. He dropped to his knees, looking at the skull in terror. "No way, that's Griff." He shook his head furiously. "What would he be doing in the damn fireplace, Matt?" I didn't know what to say. I knew there was no reason he should have been in the fireplace. None. No dog would willingly let itself burn to death. "Maybe it's a coyote," Eric reasoned, tripping over his words. "Grandma probably killed it and chucked it in here so the scent wouldn't attract other animals, and there's no coyotes out here, you know that." I dropped the skull and it cracked against the solid wood floor. A shudder ran through me. "And it's way too small to be a wolf." Eric looked on the verge of tears. Griff was probably the only happy memory we had of this horrible place. "Matt, why would she do that?" 1,000 reasons crossed my mind, all of them beginning and ending with one night 12 years ago. I stood up from the fireplace, my feet feeling weak and my sense of balance waning. I fell back into the rocking chair and it croaked a haunting welcome. "All right," I said quietly. "I think it's time to talk about what happened when we were kids." As we sat there in the dimming light of the cabin, the weight of the past settled heavily on my shoulders. Eric and I exchanged nervous glances, each knowing that we couldn't keep the truth buried any longer. Taking a deep breath, I began recounting the events of that fateful night 12 years ago. "We were just kids back then," I started, my voice trembling. "It was the middle of the night, and a storm was raging outside. Grandma had warned us about the night creatures in the woods, but we didn't take her seriously. We thought it was all just stories to scare us." Eric listened intently, his eyes wide with both curiosity and fear. "We heard strange noises coming from outside," I continued. I told him that it sounded like something was scratching at the cabin walls. We were scared, so we huddled together in the living room, hoping it would pass. "But it didn't," Eric interjected, remembering the terror vividly. "No," I replied, my throat dry. "It got worse. Something was trying to get in, and then we heard Grandma's voice calling to us from outside. She said she was locked out and begged us to open the door. We didn't know what to do. It sounded like her, but it was so strange, so unnatural. It felt wrong. We decided not to open the door, and that's when it began to speak in our voices, taunting us, trying to manipulate us." My brother's eyes widened in disbelief. "I remember now," he whispered. "It was trying to trick us, pretending to be each other, trying to get us to open the door." Tears welled up in my eyes as the truth weighed heavily on my conscience. Yes, and we were so scared, so confused. We didn't know what was real and what wasn't. Finally, it just stopped, and we waited until morning to venture outside. Eric's face paled as he pieced it together. "But where was Grandma?" "That's the thing," I said, my voice quivering. "We never found her. She was gone, disappeared without a trace. We searched for days, but it was as if she had vanished into thin air." Eric looked horrified. "Then who or what was trying to get inside the cabin?" "That's the question that has haunted me all these years," I admitted. As darkness enveloped the cabin, we felt an eerie presence lurking in the shadows. It seemed like the horrors we had experienced as children were far from over. Goosebumps prickled on my skin, and I realized that we were not alone. Suddenly, we heard a faint whisper from behind us, a voice that sent chills down our spines. "You should have let me in." In terror, we turned around to find an ethereal figure standing in the doorway. It was a ghostly, twisted version of our grandmother, with glowing eyes and a sinister grin. "I've been dating a dead woman for 2 weeks. We're about to take this relationship to the next level. Are you lonely? Think your soulmate isn't born yet? Maybe she died already. We have MILFs, GILFs, and pretty young ladies asterisk. Death for us at Summons Inc. only means it's harder to travel. I don't even know how I ended up on this site. I woke up one day after a bad hangover of drinking cheap wine alone at home, and it was open on my computer. There was an address and a few vague compliments on the website. I couldn't resist. Why am I falling for this, you ask? Looking for a girlfriend is hard these days. My few girlfriends were from other states, from other countries even, and ended up cheating on me. Long-distance relationships with the living aren't working. Why not try the dead? Also, $89.99 is way less than I paid for a plane ticket to watch Leslie Riley kiss her real boyfriend in front of me. And I'm bored. I'm bored with my life. I want to do something out of the ordinary. The address was in a bigger town, a 2-hour drive, and they opened on Saturdays, so I drove there. It was easy to find the address. Despite not being a big building, the place was brand new and flashy. I parked in a nearby smaller street and entered. I was welcomed by a woman with very red lips and bulky balayaged hair that looked like her name was Shonda, and it really was. Shonda was in her mid-30s and wore red lipstick. She was cheery after seeing me enter. "Hi, I'm Shonda." She pointed at the cheap golden name tag. "What's your name, dear?" "It's Ethan." "So, you're here to get a girlfriend for yourself?" "Yes, if that's all right," I said, insecure. She talked about disrupting the souls of the dead like it was a mere office business, but it was interesting. It was worth it. After paying, I filled out a few forms on a tablet. They didn't ask for personal info such as full name or legal documents, just your preferences to make sure you're getting a good match. It was pretty much a personality test. I finished in around 15 minutes and a girl came from the back door. She was in the middle 20s like me and pretty cute, with shoulder-length brown hair and big shiny eyes. "Hi, Ethan." She seemed joyful and kissed me in the cheek. Her body felt very solid and warm, which surprised me for some reason. "I'm Lisa. What do you want to do together?" We were still in time for a late lunch, so I took Lisa to a place I liked. She asked a lot about me. "It feels so good to properly eat again," she remarked, biting a huge piece of her burger. I had chosen a place with plenty of options and was eating spaghetti. "What do you mean properly eat?" I asked. "What's the afterlife like? You can't eat?" "Oh, I can't tell you a lot about it, but you don't need to eat there. Sometimes we eat just because we miss it, but it never tastes as good because it's not exactly real," she explained, her mouth still half full. "How it's not real? If I can ask that, of course." "Everything in the afterlife is made of thoughts. You can make things come to existence with your mind, but it's hard. You have to be, let's say, high level or friends with people that are experienced. It's easier to collectively imagine things and places too." "I get it. This is so fascinating," I said. I could spend all the time asking her about being dead. I wanted to know how she died, how she lived, everything. But it seemed too rude, so I could only hope she would spontaneously talk about it. We talked about a lot of things. She was very nice and, like myself, a Dickens fan. I think that we really connected, and when we shared a dessert by the end of the meal, it felt like I knew Lisa for at least a few weeks. It was hard to guess when she died because she knew a lot about current subjects. I had to ask how. She smiled. Summons Inc. helps us keep up with everything that is happening so we can connect better with the living. I can even sing a little bit of a Frank Ocean song, you know? I laughed. I hope they pay you well for that. You don't need money in the afterlife, Ethan. You need knowledge to create things with your mind, that's all. But the afterlife is not bad, but it can get lonely. And sometimes every day is the same. I couldn't stop looking at her hands and wondering how it was possible to make her real, even if only for 2 days. You're wondering what I am right now, aren't you? She openly laughed. Don't worry, this is not my first afterlife date. I don't know how I can be like that, but I'm neither a ghost nor a corpse. During the time I'm here, I'm a human like you. Everything went smoothly from then on. I told Lisa about my exes. She told me a little about her friends on the other side, and how it was preparation to get a living date. For example, you can't learn a language you don't know already, unless you study it for a proper time in the afterlife. It can take as much as you take on Earth, but it usually takes less, because you don't have to waste time taking care of your bodily needs. Lisa learned Italian after she died. We walked around the city, had a Sunday together, then I drove us back to my place. It's a small, unspecific flat, but she seemed to like it. She's also fascinated by city lights, fairy lights, and lights in general. What a cute girl. Once we got to my bedroom, I think you know what happened. I banged her. We cuddled and ordered pizza afterwards. I'd say it was a normal date, except it was so much better than my normal dates. She's even-tempered, easy to please, and had the softest skin. That's literally everything I ask for in a woman. I was ready to dismiss everything as an inebriated dream, but when I woke up the next morning, she was there. I don't think I ever smiled so wide. Lisa blushed. This is my first time since I died. Monday came, and I called in sick to spend the rest of my time with Lisa at home. I never met someone so fun to be with, and so grateful for the small things, such as eating and sleeping. You can sleep there, sure, but you never dream, she explained. What's the point, right? I did what I always do in my relationships and rush things. I'm gonna miss you, Lisa. Can I request you again? Well, I think I won't get bored with you. She half smiled. But still, I got distracted by my own curiosity. Do Summons Inc. have something from you to summon you? Yes. It makes summoning easier and cheaper. They got it from my grave. You could visit it someday. I barely get visits lately. She sounded a little bit sad. Of course, I would love to, I said. Then she told me her full name and the city she was buried in. It was nearby. Part of my family had been buried there too. We spent a little more time together. I grew restless but did my best to enjoy every last hour. Well, Ethan, it's time. She kissed my nose. I had a great time with you, thank you so much. If you see my daughter, please tell her to visit more. And she quietly walked away. I can't believe what I just did. Was I in love with a dead girl? Deciding to seize the time I still had that day, I started searching for her. It was easy to find the cemetery, so I drove myself there. After looking for a while, I finally found a beautiful white marble grave. Next to it sat a familiar figure with a posy of yellow roses. The sound of my footsteps might have startled her, and she abruptly turned in my direction. Then her face relaxed in a smile. It was my grandmother. She had been crying. Ethan, it's so good to see you here. I didn't know you knew where your great-grandmother was buried, said my grandmother. She died young, and now I'm the only daughter left. I'm sorry, great-grandmother, I said. My face beat red from the terrible realization. She asked you to visit more. Grandmama was now openly crying, clearly touched. I will, Ethan. It's so good to know. Sometimes I have the feeling she's still with me. She hugged me very tightly. What were you doing in your dream? I was now crying too, but these were tears of embarrassment. I stuttered. I was eating pizza with her. I've been kidnapping girls to act as my dead wife every day for the past 5 years. I can't stop myself. The biggest and best part of me died in that accident. I wish more than anything that I died with Gabrielle, or at least that I was there to hold her hand in her final moments. She must have been so scared, so helpless, so lonely. All while I was camping with my friends like a stupid 12-year-old boy. I just cannot forgive myself. I had no one else to blame. The other driver, the one who caused the accident, died too. He was lucky enough to be gone instantly, while my Gabrielle suffered all the way to the hospital with a broken spine, and without me. Her parents and brother lived so far away. Both her best friends live in a neighboring town and didn't make it in time. She had no one. The most perfect being in the world died surrounded by strangers in a cold ambulance. Passing away crossed my mind many times, and the only reason I didn't take this way out were my parents. I am an only child with no close relatives, and they would be completely abandoned without me, both financially and emotionally. Nothing could even get close to the love I feel for Gab, but they easily get second place, and I love them very, very much. I could never do that to them. I can't just pass away the pain I feel. I'll go when they go, I told myself. But I still couldn't bear my everyday life, my empty bed, My empty life. The emptiness and coldness of the world without my sunshine. Brad, my best friend, was the one who told me about the witch. It was almost silly at the time. It came up amidst drunk conversation. I know it sounds stupid, but years ago an old lady gave me a spell. Remember when I used to stutter? She cured that for me, I swear to God. I had always wondered how he got over his stutter. It was a big problem when he was a kid, but still I had to laugh a little. Brad had been his class valedictorian, a teacher and a motivational speaker, and he was great at those. I was struggling to believe him. What did you give her in exchange? I asked. He paused and took a deep breath. I had to sacrifice 3 years of my life to her. I was 17 at the time, so 3 years meant absolutely nothing. Still is, to be honest. If she likes you, she shouldn't ask for more than 5. She made me sign a blood contract, but I'm not sure how she's supposed to take years off my life. When I questioned, Brad took me to her. She still lived in the same farm, and according to him, hasn't aged a day. Being a teenager at the time, Brad had the impression she was super old, but she was probably in her 50s. I half expected the witch to live in a house made of candy, and whole expected this story to be made up. Maybe she was a speech therapist, or just gave him confidence to overcome his impediment, but this wasn't the case. Long time no see, Brad. I knew long ago the stars would bring you here on this day and time, she said simply. She then turned to me. James. Quickly scanning me with her deep dark green eyes, the witch seemed to read my very soul, but I wasn't afraid. If anything, I felt like I could trust her. She had this powerful aura to her. She introduced herself simply as Circe, and asked Brandon to leave and come back for me in 3 days. I didn't sleep for those 3 days, but they were so much easier than all the sleepless nights I've been having since Gabrielle was gone. I am mentally and physically unable to fall asleep without her by my side, and what little I drowse gives me awful dreams of her screaming in pain and dying all alone. 100% of the time. In my nightmares, my wife blames me for abandoning her, for not being there to keep her from driving alone on that rainy night. You can only use the spell once per person and it lasts 20 hours, Circe said, her voice raucous, but not as much as you would expect a witch's voice to be. It was more of a heavy smoker teacher. It won't harm your target in any way, but it won't work on the same girl a second time. How many years will you ask of me? I'm fine as long as I can take care of my parents until the end. She snickered. Good boy. But I won't ask anything for myself. The magic is already too demanding on the caster. At the time, I didn't care about this ominous warning. The witch instructed me to never come back to her, unless it was absolutely necessary. Questions about the spell wouldn't be considered necessary, because she already told me everything I had to know. Her attitude was mostly friendly, but as she emphasized this, she looked dead serious. I promised not to bother her. During my short stay at her shed, I considered many times to ask Circe what ulterior motive she had to simply go around teaching people spells to solve their problems. I also considered asking if she would accept money for her helpfulness. I'm not a rich man, but I make decent money. Just when I was about to board Brad's car and depart, she lightly touched my shoulder. I need nothing but time, boy, and I'm satisfied as long as I'm not letting ancient magic die. In 3 days, just as predicted by Circe, I had completely mastered the spell. After that, my life was a blur of bars, nightclubs, and dates with girls from Tinder. Every night I go out to find my Gabrielle. I desperately need to have someone by my side, someone I can turn into my wife, so I can finally sleep peacefully. Thankfully, I don't look bad and I can afford to go to nice places. It's tiring to flirt and keep some inane conversation for a while before I can ask a girl to go back to my place. I'm not a bad person. I just want and desperately need to have my wife. I would never bring a girl home without their consent. I just want to fall asleep holding her in my arms and smelling her hair. Sometimes the girl is not that into me, so I have to quickly find someone else. Once or twice I had to hire a girl, but I'd rather not. It's troublesome if they don't come back for 20 hours. As soon as we arrived at my apartment, I did it. I bewitched the girl, and in a matter of minutes both her looks and personality were the exact same as my wife's. Circe didn't explain to me the mechanics behind it. Am I channeling Gabrielle's soul or just emulating it? I don't care if it's an illusion, as long as I can feel at peace. The girl won't remember anything. When the spell is almost wearing out, I drop them somewhere safe and public like a mall. They will be a little disoriented as to why they are there, but fine. I don't want to hear about their boring feuds with their coworker Karen, but I care about these girls' safety. After all, they are the reason why I can spend 20 blissful hours with my Gabrielle. For a while I felt fine. Sure, I felt empty and even shameful for chasing after random girls, but I knew this was a small price to pay to have the woman of my dreams by my side again. Then it started. At first I would wake up with bad bruises and small burns in my body. Although they were hurtful and bothered me, I didn't think much of it. I was probably sleepwalking. Then my vision started to go bad. I figured it was only the combo being in my late 30s and working on the computer the whole day, but decided to go to an ophthalmologist anyway. He found nothing wrong with my eyes. As my vision worsened fast in a matter of weeks, I thought it was best to try a neurologist and get a CAT scan, but it also didn't show anything wrong. Now I am pretty much blind. It's awfully hard to drive and work, but the worst thing is that I can barely see Gabrielle's face. Still, I can smell and hold her, and fall asleep peacefully, even if in the morning my body is covered in hematomas. Last night the spell went terribly wrong. I'm more than used to the spell, and the lines I have to recite aren't long. I know I didn't do anything different. Still, as the girl's body started to change, instead of turning into Gabrielle, she grew black wings on her back, and mantis appendages replaced her legs. As her wings spread, she let out an inhuman shriek, and I noticed her mouth was covered in scars and purple liquid, with fangs coming from her lower jaw, like a payara fish. Her eyes were completely white. As she dashed towards me, I shot her. I had to shoot this monstrous thing 6 times to simply make it fall unconscious. Then I put her head inside a bag and didn't let go. It took her 4 hours to suffocate and completely stop breathing. I was panting in panic the whole time. I obviously couldn't get any sleep that night, and my desperation was beyond words. Would the spell never work again? Would I be charged with murder? Are there more creatures like this? I felt awful because I had murdered an innocent woman after turning her into a monster, but this wasn't even my main concern. All I could think was how I couldn't stand not seeing my Gabrielle ever again. And, like the last time, I didn't even have the chance to say goodbye. But maybe it was a good thing that I didn't sleep, because by 4 a.m. Brad was pounding on my door so heavily I thought the whole building was going to collapse. His tongue had turned into a giant slug, or a tentacle, all wet and sticky, full of infected blisters that looked like carpal lockers. It was something so disgusting, so unholy, that I threw up twice in a minute. Brad could barely stutter some incomprehensible words. He also threw up, letting go of the revolting mutant tongue, just to have another one grow to replace it. They both were around 50 centimeters long and very thick. He was crying now. I decided this was an emergency big enough to seek Cersei and grab my keys. I had always been a practical guy, but at that moment I hated so much that Brad was in even worse shape than I. I just wanted to cry, then plant a bullet on my brain. I drove there in the dark almost blindly, while Brad threw up the thing repeatedly, always growing a new gooier one immediately. We found Cersei collapsed on her front door, holding her throat with both her hands and choking. "This was too powerful, James," the witch spoke between painful coughs and desperate gasps for air. She was drooling something purple and so acid that the skin from her chin was all burnt and messed up. "I should have never released it into the world." I called an ambulance for Cersei and Brad. She stopped breathing before they even arrived, while Brad is under intensive care, but no one can understand his condition. Somehow, I know that he's never going to make it, but at least it's better to die than to live such a miserable, disgusting existence. I couldn't wait until the night. I tried casting the spell over 5 or 6 girls and it just won't work anymore. They don't turn into monsters, but they also don't turn into anything else. They don't turn into my wife anymore, and I need her so badly. I'm quickly losing my mind. Sorry, Mom and Dad, but I guess it's time I join you in death, my adored Gabrielle. I hope there's no heaven and hell, or else we'll never meet again. I hope a machine gun will be enough to murder me, because I shot my head 10 times with a handgun and nothing happened. And I hope that the fact that my apartment was completely empty when I came back doesn't mean that the monster I created is on the loose.